Welcome back. I'm here with County Board Chair Christian Dorsey and Vice Chair Libby Garvey, who are explaining some of the key decisions the board took at its first meeting of 2019. Now, at this meeting, the board took a rather, let's call it unusual action in that you voted on a resolution your own motion to lift some parking restrictions. Explain this one a little bit to me.
So we have a residential parking permit program in Arlington, and that's something that the board actually doesn't govern. We delegate that to the county manager. And so that program has 24 zones throughout Arlington where there are various restrictions on who can park and when they can park, mostly to preserve the ability for people who live in Arlington to not have spaces eaten up from people who are commuting from outside of Arlington or visiting from other places. Yeah. So we want to make sure that you can have access to your home to park. So we've got 24 such zones in the county, and one of them, and actually the most recent one, the circumstances were that people who lived within the neighborhood had an awfully difficult time finding parking, yet in the restricted areas there was an abundant supply of parking. So the program wasn't working to meet its design purposes. And then on top of that, we found out in the middle of sort of unpacking this issue that the process for designating the parking zone didn't follow the county manager's designated policies. And so for the board, we looked at both situations. You've got a situation where parking, the program is not working as intended, and we can't see that it followed the administrative practices, so we, on our own motion, decided that we were going to eliminate them.
Yeah. Okay. And we're in the middle of a study. That was sort of part of the thing that got mixed. In fact, that's how I think the problems with how this particular zone was decided were discovered, when they started really looking at what was going on. And the study, I think we have another, is it 6 months to a year before they come back with some. And meanwhile, as Christian mentioned, we had people who, they were giving us stories. If they weren't home by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they were walking like a mile or 2 miles to try to get home. And again, when the weather is bad and late at night. Whereas the other neighborhood right there next door, they really are all kind of in the same neighborhood. Every home had a driveway and a garage, so pretty much the streets were empty. So, in a way, this was a frustrating thing to me, and it took us a while to kind of come back and change it and realize what all was going on. But our putting in that program made life kind of miserable for some people, really worse. And that bothered me. The role of government is to make life better, get the situation set so people can have a good life. Yeah. And when we make things worse for people, it kind of drives me crazy. So that was part of the reason that we did this unusual step, because we just felt like we really needed to do that.
So the study that's going on now, is this on all of the residential parking
Yes, the whole
areas?
program, yes.
And where does that stand right now? Are we just looking at what's working, what's not? Is there anything we need to change countywide?
And what's the purpose of the program? And is it meeting its intent? Because it came in, I think it was the 70s, wasn't it?
Well, the program's been around since the Supreme Court cases in the 70s. Actually, the Supreme Court case was based on Arlington that established the ability to restrict parking to prevent commuters from taking up spots that should be enjoyed by people who are part of a locality. But our program hasn't been reviewed since 2005. And so, we're Arlington.
Community has changed
so we want to make
since,
sure we're reviewing things in a timely fashion. And, this was a particularly difficult case, but it certainly merits looking at the entire program to see what we could do administratively better, whether there are new ways of designating these, whether or not the fees are appropriate. We need to look at it really from the ground up. But as Libby said, this particular restricted area provided such an imbalance of program goals and objectives that we felt continuing it would do a disservice to not only the affected residents, but to the entire integrity of the program.
Okay.